Hello and welcome to another episode of The Metagame, the live streaming show where we'll be talking not only about board games, but also sometimes about talking about board games. I'm your host, Chaz Marler, and we find ourselves a mere 3 or 4 days from the start of the GAMA trade show, which isn't really a convention, but is more a place for retailers and publishers and designers to meet and discuss what's coming up in the upcoming year for board games and board games retail. So you got a nice mix of new products coming out and those discussions and really in-depth retail monetization discussions. Oh, can't wait. So I'm going to be there. And I'm going to be there in the role of a correspondent for the Dice Tower, trying to find as much info about as many games as possible and reporting that back to everybody. So what I'm going to do this time in this episode is I've compiled a list of the games that not only I am excited about seeing more information on, but also games that people that I've asked, I've in some previous episodes and other videos, I've asked for people's comments on what games they're looking forward to. And so what I've done is I've gotten kind of the descriptions of those games, and I'm going to go through these games that people are excited about, and also kind of why I'm excited about them. And then at the end, if we have any time, I want to solicit the viewers to add on any additional games coming out this year, even games that may or may not be at GAMA, that you guys are excited about and why. And that'll kind of set the stage for GAMA, the big kind of grand opening of the year in board game publishing as we kind of kick open the door for convention season. So, excuse me, I have a little bit of a chest cold today too. So as you know, there's nothing better when you have a chest cold to come out and talk for an hour. So my apologies if I'm a little bit off today, but let's not let that stop us. Let's get right into the games, and let's start with the elephant in the room, the one of the biggest games so far this year. And whoop, stretch that guy up a little bit. Star Wars Rebellion. Now, the publisher, what they have to say about Star Wars Rebellion, why we should be excited about it, is because it's asymmetrical play. You have the Empire and the Rebels fighting, and you both actually also have different win conditions. Excuse me, the Rebels need to blow up the Death Star, and the Empire needs to find the Rebel base before they run out of time. So you actually have very thematic goals for each side. And this game, I am really, really hoping that this game kind of lives up to the initial responses and hype that I've seen it receive so far. Everyone that I have seen and heard of that has had a chance to play it so far has fallen in love with it. So I'm hoping that this lives up to the hype and is a fantastic, in-depth, operatic space battle game. All right, and last thing I wanted to say about Star Wars Rebellion is that the other things that's mentioned about it, some of the things that are neat is the publisher mentions that it features over 150 plastic miniatures with 2 game boards. So apparently this thing's going to be humongous on the table. I guess you fit 2 boards together, perhaps that means, or maybe it's just player boards. But but it includes 32 different planets. So hopefully there's lots of replayability because everything's spread out and you have lots of different strategies you can undergo to go to different places on the board. So that game is the first one, kind of the elephant in the room I wanted to get out of the way because a lot of people are looking forward to it. Now the next one was recommended by another viewer, which I actually hadn't heard of yet. And that is a game called Grand Prix. In fact, there was so little information about Grand Prix available that I couldn't even find a box shot for it. So I did find this image here. Still not used to the backwardsness of the streaming. I did find this picture here that showed kind of it looks like a racing game there. And again, this one seems to have the board has a very, very large footprint. But Grand Prix is by GMT Games. And about this one, the publisher had to say that this is a new auto racing game from Jeff and Carla Horger and GMT Games. And it it can play up to 11 players who control either one team or two cars for multiple teams. And you'll score in different ways. So there's kind of different strategies that you can take, I hope. So that is Grand Prix, which looks, basic's not the right word. It looks like they took a game, a normal game, and then just kind of blew it up really huge almost, it seems like. So we'll have to find out more. Hopefully I'll find out more about Grand Prix. And if anyone out there is interested in Grand Prix and has any specific questions about it, post those in the comments below. And what we'll do is I'm going to go through the comments after the show and kind of scoop up any more specific questions or things that people want to find out. I'm going to try and compile those questions and be on the hunt for answers to those things at GAMA if I can. So any specific questions about this game or any others that we mentioned, let me know in the comments below and I'll be doing my research there. Someone just asked in the comments if they think that if Grand Prix looks like Formula D, and that could be the case. I don't know why, I was almost thinking not Flick 'em Up, the racing game where you flick the cars. I'm drawing a blank. All I can think of is calling it Flick 'em Up. But anyway, I was thinking it looked more like that one, but it does not appear to be a dexterity game. So my initial thoughts were off on that one. So, okay, let's move on to another one that was recommended by a viewer, and that is Doctor Who Time of the Daleks. And I thought I would never see the day where I actually saw an actual licensed Doctor Who hobby board game come to market. Because my understanding is that the BBC was very, very strict about their Doctor Who licensing. So this is from Gale Force 9, who has done fantastic jobs with other licensed properties. So perhaps Gale Force 9, showed their chops and proved that they can actually produce a quality game based on a television property, and maybe that's what helped lead them to getting this one. But I'm really excited that an actual licensed Doctor Who game is going to exist. And about this game, again, we're looking at preview games, so some of these there's not a lot of information available on yet. But what the publisher has to say about this one is that you will travel in time and space. I know that kind of surprised me too for a Doctor Who game, but travel in time and space, meet companions, have adventures, and meanwhile, while you're doing all that, you'll try to be thwarting the Daleks' master plan of erasing Doctor Who from history. So they ask you if you have what it takes to fill the Time Lord's shoes. I don't know, but I'm really excited to try filling those shoes because this game could either be a fantastic game. I'm hoping almost something legacy style where, since it's dealing with timey-wimey issues, you can really get into messing up the gameplay, but I have no information and no idea if it is, but I'll keep my fingers crossed. And that's one of the specific questions I have about this game, if it has any legacy-esque elements to it, because that would be fantastic. All right. The next game on the old list here is another one that I had not heard of yet until someone mentioned it, but that is Fog of Love. That's a very small fog. Let's enlargen the fog there. There we go. So Fog of Love is from a company, Hush Hush Projects. That's the only name of a publisher that I was able to dig up for it. So I'm not sure if this was a Kickstarter or what. So, but what I do know, the little bit I know about Fog of Love, is that it's a card game for two players who act out a stormy love affair. So there's trouble in paradise, and you're kind of working the kinks out there. And the publisher goes on to say that you play from the very first sparks of attraction through in-law encounters, awkward situations, arguments, parties, thoughtful gifts, secret affairs, children, and reconciliations to hopefully a happy ending. So this Fog of Love game kind of goes through the entire relationship. We've recently had the game And Then We Held Hands be released, which deals with just one aspect of a relationship, kind of the ending or the breakup of it. But so this seems to be that same central theme, but a much different approach. So not just a carbon copy, apparently, but this takes the entire the entire relationship from start to finish, which could be a really interesting thing. I don't know if there's any kind of continuity, if it's just standalone games, but another thing that I've been seeing a lot is continuity from one game to another, which we'll talk about in an upcoming game. But another thing about this game that they talk about is each player is going to have a character that's made up from different personality traits that are going to influence what they desire and what they want to avoid. So, for example, they mentioned you can become a one-legged, disorganized, cocky female pilot who gets a kick out of adventures, a kind, nerdy male TV celebrity who's ambitious and sensual, or a cute, flirtatious, impulsive, and cynical female florist with a big nose piercing. So the possibilities are almost endless. Does it have an RPG element? Again, does it have continuity to it? Is it just kind of, is it a cross between Then We Held Hands and CV or Mage Knight or something? I don't know. I'm going to be interested to find out more about this one and to see if this theme, I want to know if the theme of this game, it's a much different theme. And Then We Held Hands, which is a similar theme, seems to be doing well. But I wonder if that theme is off-putting to some people because it's not a standard, regular, traditional theme for a board game, which is not a bad thing. It's always nice to innovate and try new things. So I want to know what the feedback is on Fog of Love, which is somewhere on the screen, here, there, wherever. Okay, point that way. I want to know what the feedback is about Fog of Love and to know if the theme is off-putting or what you hope this game does with that theme and the approach it's taking. All right, so that's Fog of Love, another one in the GAMA preview that I'll be looking forward to. All right, the next game is interesting because every game that this designer develops is interesting to me, it seems. Everyone always has something to say about his games, and that's Illbound from Red Raven Games and Ryan Lockett. And this is the same person who, Red Raven Games and Ryan's games are amazing because from my understanding, he does everything. He develops the game, he does the artwork and the self-publishing and everything. He runs the whole show, kind of a renaissance man of board gaming. And I can't, just from dabbling a little bit in self-publishing comic books back in the 90s, that was so much work to put together everything from the concepts to the art to the putting the pieces together to tell a coherent story to getting things published and distributed. I can't imagine doing that on the scale of a board game. So that's really, really amazing. And the thing about it that's super amazing is that he pulls it off and his games don't seem watered down because of it. So that's really, really interesting. But as for Illbound, Illbound sets the stage where the player will take command of a ship and its crew, and they'll sail to island towns and collect resources, hire crew, commission buildings, and have a capital city. And each building that's going to be in it is going to have a unique ability, and your combination of buildings can greatly enhance the player's strength as being a trader or a builder or an invader. So it looks like there's, again, many different paths to victory available to it and different strategies, which I believe he's pulled off pretty well in the past. So Illbound kind of reminds me of another seafaring game that I've been looking forward to a long time, and I'm going to be very interested to see how it compares to that one. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise. I'll talk about the other seafaring game when we get to it. But again, Illbound sounds like it's going to be something where there's lots of different paths to victory, lots of different strategies you can take. Not necessarily story-driven like Above and Below was, but you never know. And so that's Illbound. All right, let's hide Illbound now, and let's scroll down to the next one. Now, I apologize. This next one I have barely any information about, and that is Attack on Titan. And this is by Cryptozoic Games. And Attack on Titan was another one of those where there's so little information available about it. I wasn't even able to get a box cover. But this is an image from Gen Con 2015. And you can see here is the Titan. And it's like a game board that's vertical instead of horizontal. It stands up. And you can see there's actually little platforms on the Titan. And the players actually will climb up the Titan to defeat him. So they'll be putting pieces on the platforms as they go up. And so it kind of is innovative with the board design and how the players interact with it. Other than that, I have not been able to find very much information on Attack on Titan. But the only blurb really that I was able to find from the publisher about it is, in Titan: The Last Stand, one player will take on the role of a Titan while other players represent the human heroes fighting it. The Titan piece is a vertical game board element that the hero game pieces climb on in an effort to take it down. And that's it. So it seems like so far the real selling point of this game that's being pushed is the fact that it has a vertical playing board. And yeah, there it is. I hope that there ends up being more to this game than just a vertical board, because right now that really seems to be the main thing that there is to talk about it. So if you have any experience with this game, and there's anything specific about it that I've missed or would be worth finding out more, like finding out if they've gone in certain directions with the game or any rumors or buzz that you've heard, let me know in the comments below. And if I can find this game at GAMA, I'll flesh out those questions as well to see what kind of direction this game is going in. Okay. Speaking of directions that a game is going in, Plaid Hat Games has recently announced 2 expansions for Ashes: Rise of the Phoenixborn. And there were a few people, there were some people that were able to go to an actual off-site Plaid Hat event at BGG-Con last November, and they actually got to see previews of the upcoming cards and art for the expansions. But the rest of us have had to just kind of wait. And so I want to mention the 2 expansions coming out for Ashes. There's, all my pictures are small. Whee! There is, first of all, the Frostdale Giants expansion, which features a new Phoenixborn, Rin Northfell, and has an entire ready-to-go play deck, and has 2 conjurations, a conjured alteration spell, and uses, the deck is designed to use 10 blue dice, which I thought was really interesting because this one and the other expansion as well that's coming out, which is behind my other picture, not for long. The other one, Children of the Black Cloud, is another expansion that apparently uses, this one uses 10 of the black dice. So instead of having a mix like all of the decks in the base game did, a different mix of the different colors of dice that are available, it looks like these decks are designed to use all one color, if I'm reading that correctly, which is really interesting because I didn't expect to see that from Ashes anytime soon. I thought they were always going to have a blend and a mix. This is interesting, but this also then underscores my main desire for Ashes, and that is more cards, because especially if they're going to be making expansions that focus on one color, let's get lots of these expansions, lots of these out, so we have lots of cards dealing with one color. Focusing on one color is fine, but let's get lots of them out there so we have the options to either have strong decks of one color or have lots of cards in our library available to mix and match from. So I was really interested, I was really intrigued when I discovered that both of these expansions apparently focus on one color of dice and how that's going to play in to the current card pool. Is that color going to become omnipresent in every deck because there's going to be more, higher percentage of those color cards? So the main thing about these Ashes expansions that I want to know about at GAMA and find out about is, what does this mean for future expansions? Are they going to have a whole set of ones that are focused on a single color? And when can we look forward to more of those expansions? So those are the upcoming 2 Ashes expansions. That will be at GAMA, hopefully. Next up, we have a blast from the past in a way. A game based on a property which has been getting some mileage, thanks in part, for better or worse, from recent movie reboots. And that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And this is by IDW Games. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shadows of the Past is going to be a scenario-driven campaign game. It's going to feature content from the actual IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book, which is neat because you'll notice here the character design, if this is the final box, the character design of the Turtles is from the comic book. They don't even have the color-coordinated bandanas. They're actually just all red like they were in the original comic. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the comic book actually started out very, very pulpy, not necessarily graphic, but it was very serious and could have some content that was definitely not the PG and PG-13 content that the all of the movies and animated series have produced. So if this could be a return to form for the kind of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that would be a really neat version of the Turtles to see introduced into mainstream media. Let's see what else that they had to say about what the publisher had to say about this. So in the game, you're going to be taking on the role of your favorite turtle or the ultimate villain, Shredder. And players are going to battle their way through a series of 60 to 90-minute missions in which they develop their characters, strengths, fighting styles, and equipment along the way to create a lasting story arc. So as I was mentioning before, kind of a theme for 2016, even a partial theme that we're seeing in games, is continuity from one game to another. RPGs have done this forever, of course, and legacy games have introduced this. But Turtles here, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, definitely in its own publisher-released comments, does talk about continuity from one game to the next. And that's something that really excites me for 2016 and beyond, is seeing continuity in games that are not role-playing games. Continuity in board games. That's an idea that I think has a lot of potential, and it'll be interesting to see how that can be pulled off in a non-legacy game. Because a legacy game was designed to be small, compartmentalized, X number of plays. And so a non-legacy continuity title, does that mean that it introduces the idea for an infinite number of plays? That's going to be really interesting to find out. And that's one of the many things about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game that I'm really, really interested in finding out. So that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by IDW, focusing on the continuity aspect. Now, speaking of continuity and one game leading into another, is a game that I actually was kind of surprised to see, because this means that they're continuing this game more than I thought they would, and that is the Dead of Winter, The Long Night expansion. Now, this surprised me. Hearing this game announced surprised me for a number of reasons. One is the box cover. It conveys the theme of the game, but I was a little surprised that they went with something so gruesome for their box cover, because, I mean, if you're average customer going in through into the game shop, I don't know if that would kind of turn you off, or maybe you'd be more excited about the game. But you got a zombie there covered in boils, so I was a little surprised that they went in that direction with the box cover. I mean, it matches the theme, and that's fine. I just and then it's not like, no, you shouldn't do that. I was just really surprised because it seemed like a very bold move. The second thing about this Dead of Winter, The Long Night expansion, is it's a standalone and/or expansion to the base game of Dead of Winter by Plaid Hat Games. But what surprises me is I was actually hoping that the next release in the Crossroads series was going to be the long-rumored Crossroads game taking place in space. Dead of Winter is fun, and I enjoy it, and I'll play it when it hits the table. I don't own a copy of it myself, but what I personally was hoping to see for the next Crossroads product released was a game with using the Crossroads system that is almost like the movie Alien or even Aliens, the first or second one of those, where you're marooned in this spacecraft, something's going on, and you have these decisions to make to save or betray your crew. That's really what I was hoping to see. So hearing that when the next Crossroads product was announced to be an expansion for Dead of Winter, it's going, oh, okay, you're not done with that title yet. You're still kind of making some content for it, and that's cool. But I'm still more anticipating the potential rumored space-themed Crossroads game. But in the meantime, we got this expansion for Dead of Winter, which is going to be coming out. So hopefully I'll get a chance to speak with Plaid Hat Games to find out if this is the only expansion coming out for Dead of Winter, if they have more plans for Dead of Winter, and how those plans are going to dovetail into their future plans for the Crossroads system. So there you go. Get that gruesome boil-covered zombie off the list. Okay. The next game is... Actually, there was no images available for it whatsoever, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly because a viewer asked about it specifically, and that's just what's coming up from the legendary card game system from Upper Deck Entertainment. We have Captain America 75th Anniversary Legendary expansion about to come out, and coming out later this year is going to be a legendary expansion, one of the big box ones based on Civil War, which is going to have new heroes, new villain groups, new masterminds, new schemes, of course. And they mention one thing that intrigues me is that there's going to be a new ways to play by teaming up with a partner and taking sides against the opposition. This could be, if this is what I think it is, or I'm hoping it is, this could be great because one thing I've really wanted to see in Legendary is a way to play, instead of just PvE, player versus environment, or players versus the game, to be able to play PvP. Actually do the same sort of card drafting and purchasing and fighting and everything, while you still have the schemes and the villains in the town and everything else going on, but actually have a way to have direct confrontation with the other player. If this is kind of what they are introducing with the Civil War expansion, it'd be a perfect time to introduce it. And if it is what they're introducing, this is going to be, for me, perhaps my favorite expansion for Marvel Legendary thus far. But we're going to have to wait and see, and hopefully I'll be able to eke out a little more information about how the team-up and the player confrontation is going to work in Legendary. So, photo not available, I'm sorry. All right, continuing on with our theme of continuity is the game I'm hoping to find out more about at GAMA, which is just around the corner. It's actually, I believe, at the printer. And this game was announced, the designer confessed that he announced it a little bit too early. Been waiting for it for like 2 years now. And that is, we will hopefully finally get to see Seafall this year. Seafall by Plaid Hat Games and Rob Davio is going to be one of the legacy style games where you go in and you actually make the game your own, like Risk Legacy, Pandemic Legacy. You're going to go in and explore things, discover things, and every single copy of this game that is in people's collections is going to end up starting the same, but end up completely different from one another. And the official word on Seafall is that it's going to be a 4X game. You will explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, set in the age of sailing, reminiscent of the old world sailing, which, when I mentioned Illbound, I wondered how Illbound and Seafall are going to compare, because they both seem to be kind of that age of sail time. And I heard that someone wondered if Illbound might be Seafall Light, but I think that that's an unfair comparison. I wouldn't want to prematurely shoehorn Illbound in any sort of category prematurely without playing both. I think you really have to play both to make that comparison. So I think making that comparison is premature and not a good idea to do, and could actually harm someone's view of Illbound because they're making that comparison in their mind, and when it isn't that, they're disappointed when they shouldn't be. So keep that in mind. But set in the same scenarios, but they could be completely different games. But in Seafall, the world is starting to claw its way out of a dark age, and people have begun to rediscover seafaring technology. So players are going to take on the role of a mainland empire that consults with a consortium of advisors to discover new islands, explore those lands, develop trade, send out raiding parties, take part in ship-to-ship combat, and more. So could this be like a seafaring version of Xia Legends of Adrift system with a legacy aspect to it? If so, I'm on board. I've been waiting. Seafall is the game I'm hoping to find out more about at GAMA, and which should be coming out this year. Seafall is the game that I have been looking forward to the longest by far. So it's going to be really exciting to finally see what comes, to actually finally see what they did with this game and its concepts. Speaking of games taking concepts in a different direction, is the next game on our preview list, which is Pandemic Cthulhu, or more specifically, Reign of Cthulhu. And this was one that when I heard it announced, my initial reaction was, oh, Pandemic jumped the shark, huh? Okay, Pandemic Cthulhu. But the more I thought about it, the more it makes sense. So I retract my shark jumping comment about Pandemic. I apologize, Pandemic. Because in a way, we've already seen Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu in Defenders of the Realm. Because Defenders of the Realm, you are this this adventuring party that is trying to knock back these hordes from four different clans of villains that are encroaching on this city. And I'm sure Reign of Cthulhu Pandemic will be closer to Pandemic in flavor than Defenders of the Realm. But it's not that far-fetched of a concept for a Pandemic game. So I'm hoping that it's not just I'm hoping that there's a few more twists put into this than just a rethemed Pandemic. I'm hoping that they take advantage of some of the bizarre, horrific things that could happen in the world of Cthulhu and apply that to this game to add some twists and surprises to it, instead of just making it Pandemic with a different skin for people who aren't into the disease-fighting Pandemic. But we'll see. And so that is Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. Thank you very much. All right. Another game that I admit kind of snuck up on me, I was not aware of, but now that I am aware of it, I'm really excited and want to be digging into more of this, is the Star Trek Frontiers game coming out from WizKid Games. This excites me because Star Trek Fleet Captains, also designed by WizKid Games, is one of my favorite games. That is, Star Trek Fleet Captains is the game where everyone says it's like playing a season of Star Trek, the TV show. You explore different worlds, you have weird random events happen, you have missions that you're going on, you can get into ship-to-ship battles. It's a wonderful game. To me, it's almost a sandbox game, like Xia, Legends of Adrift system is, because to me, you can, with a little bit of creativity, you can kind of take the ideas there and play with them. I've mentioned before that a friend of mine and I actually took Star Trek Fleet Captains and kind of, when we played it once, added an RPG element where we had this storyline going through and having characters from one game go over to the next. And ships that were damaged or lost were still lost and damaged and were being rebuilt and stuff from one game next. So, but this game, Star Trek Frontiers, hopefully takes what Star Trek Fleet Captains started, streamlines some of the clunkiness out of it, and then pushes it even further into being a 4X game, because that's what I believe it's being marketed as. And for example, what the publisher has to say about it is that there's going to be a contested region of space accessible through known wormholes, which have drawn the attention of powerful forces all throughout the galaxy. So you're going to have like almost this one place, all these places, all this strange new world that all of these different races are trying to get to. Both the Federation and the Klingon Empire, who share a delicate alliance at the time this game takes place, have recently built outposts in the region, but now news of grave troubles brewing in the region have prompted both the Klingons and the Federation to investigate immediately. So in the game, players are going to command their ship, recruit new crew members, earn experience points, and use their skills to confront the challenges that take place in the Star Trek universe. So anything could happen. Players are going to explore and face a variety of challenges on a randomly built space map using the venture tile system that was introduced in Mage Knight. So imagine Mage Knight in Star Trek. Star Trek Frontiers is going to be designed for 1 to 4 players with multiple competitive, cooperative, and solo scenarios. Players are going to work together to defeat hostile ships or compete to explore and uncover hidden mysteries. Players will need to overcome obstacles to expand their knowledge and use their leadership as they adventure in order to be victorious in their exploration. So yeah, that's right. So imagine Star Trek fleet captains squished together with Mage Knight. And that, I believe, is what they're trying to pull off with Star Trek Frontiers. And that is why Star Trek Frontiers is one of the games that I am looking forward to most at GAMA. Oh, but now we're getting into the good ones. I got 3 left on my list, and these 3 games have a lot of people that are looking forward to them. And the first one on the list is going to be from Portal Games, coming up, the First Martians, Adventures on the Red Planet. And First Martians by Portal Games is being described by them as basically Robinson Crusoe on Mars. And Robinson Crusoe is a very highly praised game, very fun, incredibly difficult game. I think the number of people who have beat Robinson Crusoe could be counted on one hand of a 3-toed sloth. So it's just really challenging. So it makes sense though, because if you're going to Mars, colonizing Mars would probably be a wee bit of a challenge. You might even need to find a 2-toed sloth to count the wins for that one. So, built on the concepts introduced in Robinson Crusoe, but set on Mars, and coming out from Portal Games, and I'm going to check my notes to see what else the publisher had to say about it. Publisher mentions that the players will have the option of taking on the design as a series of separate games in custom campaign mode in which each successive game builds on the last. May sound familiar? We got that whole continuity from one game to the next thing going on again here with the First Martians. Or you can even open up the world in world mode in which the players are going to be free to roam about the Martian surface and explore as long as they can survive. So that's kind of neat, is you'll actually have kind of, it sounds like a campaign mode and non-campaign mode, so you'll have different options for how you want to play it. But First Martians, a continuity-based Robinson Crusoe game for surviving on Mars, really, really intrigues me, and this is definitely one of the games that I'm hoping to find out more about at GAMA. Anything I can find out about it. So that's the First Martians, and the next game, following our theme of continuity. In fact, one of the first games coming out in 2006 that I got a chance to preview that had that continuity concept and uses that continuity concept to the core of its gameplay is going to be Chronicles Origins. You can see here on the box even, there's a little 1, because Chronicles Origins is a magnificently intriguing concept for game design. This isn't going to be just one game with continuity. What Rob Davio and Artana Games are planning to do with this series is you're going to have actually games where you create a continuity that will then carry over to other separate board games released in this series. For example, Chronicles Origins takes place in the Stone Age. So you are a clan of cavemen, essentially. And I actually had a chance to play just a little beta testing copy of, oh, that's not this game. Don't look at that. Don't look. Secrets. I had a chance to playtest a prototype of this game at BGGCon last November. And it was really neat because you have, in this game, you have your clan of cavemen, and you each have different attributes and personal goals. You might have someone who wants to explore, someone who wants to do political things, someone who wants to protect the tribe and build up their aggressive abilities. So everybody's working for, it's a semi-cooperative type of game, depending who you play it with. Some players made it a non-cooperative game and stabbed you in the back every chance they could get, but that's a whole different conversation. So what would happen in Chronicles Origins is, for example, in our game, we had a leader, and the opportunity came up to do a coup and try to oust that leader and replace him with one of the players. And what was really interesting is the way that this whole scenario for the coup and other things that happened in the game, the way it was introduced was with small little paragraph-sized story fragments that would come in, similar to Above and Below. And so what would happen is, like Above and Below, you'd have these little stories, and you make a choice, what do I want to do, this or that, and you'd kind of would play out the results of that. But unlike the other games, story-driven games like this, in the results that would happen, like the coup that we did went very poorly. And the character who will name my character ended up getting kind of murderized as a result of it. And so we had these player boards for our clan, and on it we actually wrote down the event of this failed coup attempt, and there was this sad sonnet or some sort of folk song that was developed because of my character's failed coup attempt. And because of that, future games in this series might reference that. I'm not sure how they're going to make that work, but they said future games might reference those events, and actually those events might affect those future games. And also the way that you outfit your clan, how your tribe ended up being, what they focused on, what they put their resources into, and where they end up in Chronicles game number 1 might be the starting point for where they start out with and where you build on with the second game in the Chronicles series. So here we have potential continuity, not only from one game to the next with the same game title, but potential continuity carrying over from one game in the series to another completely different title in this series. Fantastic. If that is what this is going to be and how this is going to turn out, the possibilities here are fantastic and amazing for modern board gaming. A lot of people mentioned that 2014 was a great year for board games. Then they mentioned that 2015 was even better for board games. Personally, I was more excited about the titles that came out in 2014. I thought 2014 was one of the best years in board games since I've been back in the hobby. But 2016, with some of the new innovations and the ideas and the concepts that are being introduced, 2016 is a year that I'm more excited for this year in board games than I was about 2014. So far, this year is really on track to be not just good games, but fascinating concepts, new ideas being introduced. And lastly, speaking of ideas being introduced, we have Cry Havoc being introduced by Portal Games. And Cry Havoc is another game that I was able to play a prototype of, a very, very rough prototype of. You can see here there's little monkey discs and little printed red starbursts. These are just kind of, off a color laser printer prototype prints for this game. So it was a really rough copy. They say it was like 85, 90% done at the time. But Cry Havoc, the idea behind Cry Havoc is that it is the closest thing I've ever seen a board game the closest I've seen a board game come to being a RTS or real-time strategy video game. This game wanted to have the feel of StarCraft, and it did. And again, we played a prototype that was 85, 95% of the way done, but you could see where the publisher was going with this. And so what's really interesting about Cry Havoc is hopefully it's taking the concept of an RTS, which has usually been seen in video games, and applying that to board games. And we've had resource management and player movement, area control. We've had those things in board games for a long time. But hopefully Cry Havoc is going to accomplish what it wants to, and instead of just feeling like a resource management or area control game, really feel like one of those real-time strategy games where you're pumping out units and sending them in, and almost like cannon fodder sometimes. Or, well, actually, each player will have asymmetrical player abilities, and each character race plays a little bit differently. So one of the races might be pumping out units and just throwing them at the enemy like cannon fodder. Another race might be building up buildings and utilizing those to give themselves special abilities, so the few units they have are enhanced by these buildings that they're being supported by, and then they go out and they are harder to destroy because you got to go and get rid of their building infrastructure first before you go in and destroy them. And just on and on. Some characters use different resources or use the terrain of the board in different ways. And hopefully this game will achieve that pacing, which I think is the main thing if you want to pull off the feel of a real-time strategy game. Cry Havoc is going to need that quick pacing available to it, so it doesn't bog down in resource management. So if it can pull that off, Cry Havoc is a game that actually, to me, will feel a little bit different than other games in that respect. And if it can feel different and stand out from the crowd that way, really goes a long way to making it innovative and intriguing. So that's Cry Havoc coming out from Portal Games. Another one that I'm going to be really interested, hopefully there'll be information about it available at GAMA. I'm going to be really interested to see not only if it pulls off the RTS stuff, but how it has evolved from the prototype that we saw at BGG-Con last fall. All right, so those are the 16 or so games that myself and some of the viewers have mentioned that they're looking forward to at the GAMA trade show coming up. The only thing I know for sure is that I'm sure that I've missed some. So why don't we wrap this up? I'm kind of out of time, so I'm not going to have as much Q&A this time. I apologize. But that doesn't mean that our own conversation can't have its theme of continuity as well. We can inject some continuity into this conversation by having you tell me in the comments below which games are you interested in about that I talked about. And for the games that I talked about that you're interested in, what are some aspects, questions about, things about them, features, components? What are some things about those games that weren't covered that you would like to have more information about? And if there's information about it at GAMA that's available, I'm going to be sure to try and investigate it. But what about games that weren't mentioned at all? If there's games that were missed out on this short list, let me know and I'll try to dig up as much information about those as possible. So we're going to kind of have a weird continuity Q&A this time. We're going to push this conversation out to future episodes and just follow up in the comments and other videos. So, in the meantime, though, thank you for watching, and I appreciate everyone who's been posting. I didn't really get a chance to respond to the comments this time, but what I'm going to do is after we shut this down, I will read through the comments, and I'm going to make some notes for my own GAMA, and put for my own GAMA research as well. So I am going to read through all the comments that were posted in the chat as we were doing this episode, and next time we'll follow up and we'll kind of see what new surprises, twists, and intrigues happened with what we learned at GAMA. So, until then, thank you very much for watching. I have been Chaz Marler, and for more board game news, reviews, and commentary, Be sure to subscribe to The Dice Tower and Pair of Dice Paradise, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll keep the conversation going in those places as well. So thank you for watching, and until next time we meet, I've been Chaz Marler, and along with the comments section, we have been playing the metagame.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.